One world currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's live edition. It is December 3rd, 2012. Tonight, I'm going to be getting into a whole host of topics. And I am pleased to be bringing two guests who have been on the broadcast before, good friends of mine, fellow broadcasters, truth seekers, and all-around awesome human beings. And they have not been on in a while because they've both been super busy creating their own radio network, which is a huge endeavor, and we're going to cover that a little bit tonight. So I'm pleased to bring to the broadcast, to the airwaves here at Orion again on my radio broadcast, the one, the only, Chris Gio and Sheree Gio.
Thank you for having us, Popeye. Definitely. I love the new intro, too. I love the old one, but the new one is spot on.
Yeah, I like my new one better, too. That's why I spent some time working on it. And I have to give a big shout out to Tim, who, behind the scenes, Mr. Tim Watts, who spent many a sleepless night with me working on the intro. Big thanks to Tim. So, yeah, it does sound bad. I like the old one. I might modify the old one for a second-hour intro eventually. But you know how it is. You have to have time to actually sit and do all that stuff.
I know. I was working on a new intro right before the show, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
So, you've got to freshen it up every once in a while. We've ran ours for about a year, and I love it. I mean, I absolutely love it, but it's just got to stay fresh.
You guys do an interesting broadcast, and now that you guys have even taken a bigger step, you've taken the step into not only just broadcasting, because you did a big broadcast already, but now you guys took that step into being network owners, like having your own network and actually running it where there's other shows other than Truth Frequency on there. I mean, that's a big step.
Thank you. And it has been a huge mountain to climb, but I'm not too comfortable with promoting our network on other networks, but I know Jimmy's really cool, and we pick up a lot of the Orion shows as well.
Yeah, you guys act as an affiliate to a certain extent to some of our broadcasts. So I don't care about pumping your network, and Jimmy doesn't either. You're friends of ours, so you guys have been working hard on it. So you deserve a little credit for it. I mean, I know from behind the scenes you've been working on it for over a year now, right?
Over a year until it's finally gotten to the point of being perfected, and there was just so many different struggles, so many thousands of different combinations to try, and then everything would run right, and then it would crash after an hour, and then everything would run right and would crash after 2 hours. Now I have it completely solid. Everything's totally automated. I think we have found the right combination, and all the hard work has paid off. And we've brought on some really great shows, very interesting shows. Paranoid, Live Free FM does a show, 32 Degrees of Insanity. Shadowland Voyagers is another one. They're a group of new girls, but it's chick talk. They talk about the divine feminine and consciousness and things like that. But I think the women listeners really enjoy it.
Dude, that's cool. That's a target audience right there that nobody even bothers to care about, is the female side, where and just solid female perspective. No guy sitting around talking about it at all. That's awesome.
I remember when I used to post on the forums way back in 2005, 2006, I was always under the impression that everybody was male. And I'd run into a female on a forum. Oh my God, you're a female. I had no idea. So we just naturally, for some reason, think that this is a male arena, but there's actually a lot of women that are interested in this. So we definitely need to offer something to them.
That's pretty cool. And I have to give you a big thank you for carrying my show and Joe's show, airing our shows.
I have to say, too, that a lot of the women guests that we've had, the women hosts that I've spoken to, have brought a totally different perspective to the table and have really changed the way that I think, just from that female perspective. So that's why I think Truth Frequency works really well, because we have that balance of masculine and feminine with myself and Sheree. And I think that's definitely where to head towards as we move beyond December 21st, 2012 into the new age and the new arena of consciousness. It's been a masculine dominated age of Pisces, and now the divine feminine is starting to come in and really form together and create a balance. We've been off balance. That's what I've realized. I've even gone through the whole higher consciousness thing, and it's all about love. It's all about this. And then I realized, wait a minute, Jesus went to the desert, and first he started preaching love, and he told everybody love each other. Then he went to the desert, and he came back with an axe or a sword. That's the natural progression. First, you start out with the love and light, and then you come back and you say, okay, now that I have this understanding, now it's time to bring the sword out. Then you achieve that balance. And people think of the divine feminine as some kind of new age, feminine, not feminine, what's the term that I'm looking for? Metrosexual kind of deal. That's not what it's about at all. Men should be men, women should be women, but men should have that understanding, that thought process that the women have. For instance, a soldier that's completely working off of a masculine mentality is going to be kill at all costs. Somebody who's operating from a balance is going to think, have these people invaded our borders? Have these people hurt us? Is there a reason to fight at this point in time? Am I being threatened? So it takes you from becoming the aggressor to being the defender. And I think that's where we need to be. We need to have that sword in our arsenal. We need to have the weapons in our arsenal. But the divine feminine aspect gives us a better understanding of when to use them.
Well, see, I can give you a real world example of that. My parents got divorced when I was younger, and I lived with my mother. Not that my father would have been a bad influence on me. My father was very much an influence on me, and many of the lessons that I've learned when I was younger, I still, carry with me in my head to this day. So my father is responsible for teaching me many things and helping me, turn into the man that I am. But being raised by a woman, I also understood things from a woman's perspective. And when I was younger, I used to get in a lot of trouble. I had a bad side, I guess you could say. And I had to learn to keep, myself in check to a certain degree. And my mother helped me attain that balance. She came at me my mother was not one of these, coddling mothers, oh, my son. Like, if I did something wrong, or if something happened in town, she was like, oh God, I hope it wasn't my son. That was how she really was. You know what I mean?
Way.
But she, the way she came at me was I don't know. It's that she brought that way of that logic. There was this feminine way. I don't know how to describe it. All I know is she helped me control that side of me. And to this day, a lot of the lessons that, when I deal with women, if I have to deal with women professionally or whatever, my mother growing up taught me, be polite to women. Don't be a rude idiot. To this day, like if I see a lady and she's walking, into the store or whatever, and I'm walking out, I'll hold the door for her. And I don't do it because I'm trying to get the chick's phone number, or she could be 90 years old or whatever. I'll probably pick her up and carry her if she's 90. But the reason I'm like that is because my mom instilled that in me, to look out for people. And I've stopped my car in the middle of the street to help old ladies cross the street. No lie. My wife's been with me when I've done it. And she looks at me and she's like, "What made you do that?" It's in me. Well, my mother was partially responsible for that. You know what I mean? She made me focus on caring about other people, which that's the feminine. That's the masculine aspect is, like you said, fight, kill, fight, kill, fight, kill. And the feminine aspect is also showing love and humanity. And you need both. Because I find if there's too much of one, either side, then things get out of balance. Right now, we're just, the way I look at it, we're kind of out of balance on the masculine side of things. Mark Passio and I talked about this. We were talking about the occult aspects of 9/11 a few months back in September. And if you look at the 9/11 itself, the ritual was like a big cremation of care ritual. They were trying to kill care, or that feminine aspect. They were trying to kill it, and to a certain degree, they have. I mean, look at the past 10 years. What do you see now? Instead of cops running up to a car accident to help a guy out and pull him out of the car, and, "Are you okay? Are you bleeding, sir? Are you okay?" They rush up on the guy and they tase the guy because he won't get out of the car, and it turns out that the guy is having some sort of like diabetic fit or whatever. But instead of looking beyond and saying, "Is this person okay?" Their humanity, they instantly get aggressive and pull their tasers out. Well, what does that say to you? You know what I mean? To me, that shows that there's no balance there. There's more of this masculine kill, die, kill. You know what I mean? There's more of that than the compassion end of it. What say you?
There is definitely. Here in Denver, I've met a few police officers. One of them happens to be my neighbor, and they're the nicest people in the world. It's so weird to see the polar opposite between the jackboots in Texas that I would encounter on a day-to-day basis and the cops here. Even when I've been pulled over the couple of times, I've never had a speeding ticket once since I've been here. They address me as sir, despite my long hair, despite my appearance. I still speak pretty articulately, but it's so different. So I know it's very easy to just make that broad stroke and say all cops are like this, but there are actually a lot of good ones. One that really touched my heart recently is this article that I read, and it was the title said something to the effect of "Police Officer Gives Homeless Man Boots." The first thing in my mind was, I thought, this is going to be a story about this police officer who's harassing this homeless guy, takes him to jail, and gives him a set of prison boots. I thought that's what the story was going to be, just because of so many bad articles that I've read about police brutality and people abusing their power. As it turns out, the cop took out of his car a pair of $75 boots and gave it to the homeless man. There was nothing sinister to it whatsoever. We need more articles like this. We need more news like this, because the negative news just drowns out the positive so much, and it jades us. It makes us see the world in a completely negative way.
It makes us cynical a-holes.
It does.
It really does. And then look, case in point, you just said you saw the article and what's the first thing you thought? Oh, they probably put prison boots on them. You know what I mean? And, look at it. I'm cynical enough to look at it and go, and this is, maybe I'm wrong, and I hope I am. And I'm not saying, I shouldn't say I'm wrong. This is just an idea, a thought I had. And I'm not sure if this is the case, but it's an interesting take on it. The NYPD has a lot of bad publicity lately, right?
Yes.
Really bad publicity.
Right.
What if this whole thing was just staged? What if they saw this guy on the street and he happens to be sitting close to a shoe store, and I'm just saying it's a little convenient because they have like photo ops set up for this cop, and I'm sure they could have rushed him into it. I mean, the NYPD is huge, so having a turnaround time of getting this guy back down to one of the stations, putting his uniform on, sopping some makeup, and putting up an NYPD thing behind him, and then taking shots, it can be done. I'm just saying it is. If you look at it from the conspiratorial angle, it's interesting how it's kind of convenient that he did it. And the way it's being covered and put out there, and oh my God, the NYPD, but I'm just saying, that was brought to my attention. Actually, I didn't even come up with that theory myself. It was brought to my attention by somebody else. It's an interesting way to look at it. honestly, I hope it's just what it is, at face value, which is him doing the right thing, because that's the kind of message we need to send to people, including the automatons that wear those uniforms. It's like David Icke has said in the past, where are you without your uniform? Where's your power? Take your badge, your uniform, and your ticket book and hang it up in your closet. Where's your power? You don't have any power. The uniform has the power. You're animating that costume is what you're doing. You're putting on a costume and you're animating that costume. You're giving it physical mobility because it's attached to your body. But the costume is what actually has the power. You, as an individual, do not. Because if you took that costume off and you took your gun off, and I'm not saying if you were allowed to keep your gun and run around with it, because that's still using fear or intimidation, right? So if that same individual, that officer, took all that stuff off and was just person to person with somebody else, do you think that he would still have that leverage over the other person? No. No.
Well, and out of USA Today, actually, it said the homeless man shoeless again despite the boots. When asked about the $100 boots that Officer Larry DePrimo gave him on November 14th, he said he's hidden them because, quote, they're worth a lot of money. He says he's grateful for the gift, but he wants a piece of the pie because the photo was posted online without his permission.
Jesus Christ. You know what? See, this makes me backtrack completely on my views of humanity. Humanity doing something great, then I see some a-hole like this. I mean, wow.
Like crack money.
Well, I understand why he doesn't want to have the boots. Being homeless, a pair of boots like that would probably get him shivved, or them at least stolen. I've seen the homeless steal less, down here. So I can understand the hiding of the boots thing, but the picture being posted online thing. Look, dude, no offense, but you're sleeping on a public street, so you're in public view. You don't have any expectation of privacy whatsoever. The definition of homeless is not having a home, and if you don't have a home to go to, and you're out in the public on a public sidewalk, you really don't have any expectation of privacy. But again, he's homeless and got nothing, so you got to look at it from his point of view too. He's coming from a point of destitution, so.
That is true.
Right.
And desperation.
Yes. I mean, who knows what any of us would do in desperation. So what they should do, instead of giving the guy a pair of free boots, is try to help him get off the damn street. I mean, kudos to the cop for at least giving the guy a pair of boots. That was a nice gesture. At least there's some humanity there. We should take a step from that and move it a step further. Why don't we? How hard would it be to abolish homelessness? Wouldn't be at all, considering how many houses are empty in this country.
8 houses for every homeless person.
Right. That's disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
There shouldn't be. That means, does anybody understand the basic math there? That means there shouldn't be any homeless people.
They can give a house to every homeless person and still have 7 vacant houses for every house that they gave away.
Right.
So who's not solving problems, guys? You know what I'm saying? Who's causing the problem? You know what I mean?
How long until the next break?
We got about 5 minutes.
Okay, good. I have a story to share with you.
Go ahead. Share away, Chris. Share away.
December 24th is the 2-year anniversary of my mother's passing. When she was alive, she had a resale shop, and she would hire all of these homeless people. And it wasn't that she was hiring them. They would come to her shop, and they would say, hey, how much for this? How much for that? And they would pull change out of their pockets trying to buy stuff, like clothes. And my mom would say, no, don't worry about it. Just take whatever you want. Take whatever you want. There was just one guy in particular. And, me personally, when I meet these people, I think to myself, I don't want anything to do with these people. I don't know if they're crackheads or anything like that. My mother was just so trusting of everybody. She told this guy, he asked her, hey, can I work? Can you pay me anything if I work? I'm trying to make some money. She says, look, I can't pay you too much because I don't make too much, but I can give you a place to stay, get your food, and pay you like $30 a day or something like that. And he's like, oh, yeah, that would be great. So he would stay at the shop. And my mom would go by there at about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and she'd see the lights on. And she'd think, well, he's probably smoking crack or doing something like that. And one day she pulled in, walked up to the window to see what he was doing in the shop. He was up reading all night long. He would read books. She had this stacks and stacks and stacks of used books that he would just read through. And then one day the carnival came to town, and she got him a job with the carnival. A year later, he calls her up, and he says, hey, I'm calling you from my first cell phone. I'm about to get married to another woman that works here at the carnival with me, and we're about to buy our first house.
Wow.
I know. I know. So she took somebody who was on the streets and gave him the tools that he needed, and now he is back on track with a house, married, and everything.
Well, what's that expression that's attributed to? I think it's attributed to Jesus, although I could be wrong. You teach a man to, or you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man a fish, he eats for a lifetime.
Right. Right.
You know, give people the tools. See, that's what I try to do with the broadcast. Is I just try to inspire people's brains to turn on. Right? I'm not trying to control your brain. I just want it to turn on and actively start to think and use parts of it that maybe have been somewhat dormant. And that if I can motivate people to look within themselves for the solutions to their problems and things like that, and give them the set of tools that they need, which is really nothing more. It's actually to me, it's not even really a set of tools. All it is me pointing them in the right direction. Everybody that does things like that guy, I mean, your mom gave him the tools he needed. She pointed him in the right direction. And because he applied himself and followed through with it, see, he saw what your mother gave him as a gift. And that's something special, because how many times do you see that someone's given something like that, an opportunity, and they squander it, they throw it away?
Right.
You find out a year later they're back, they're on the streets, smoking crack or whatever. You know what I mean?
Well, there was another guy, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but it started with a YouTube video, and the guy pulled up to him and says, "Hey, can you say something for $1?" And this guy had a golden voice is what they called it. I mean, just that radio voice, that big presentation radio voice, very, very talented. And he gave him $1. And he used to be a radio broadcaster. And what happened is he went into drugs and alcohol and crack and things like that. And after this YouTube video went viral, I think it was ABC and a couple of other companies, Kraft, hired him to become their voices. Yeah, the announcers. And then he also had a job announcing like football or baseball or something like that. He had a contract.
Yeah, and he went to rehab, and he actually went to rehab, and he got cleaned up, and now it's an amazing transformation, to say the least. I've seen it. I forget the guy's name, but no, I know who you're talking about. It's amazing. It's amazing what happens when you practice random acts of kindness. It's amazing how you can change someone's life. The break is going to sneak up on us. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We got another hour and a half with the dynamic duo themselves, Chris and Sheree Gio. Do not go anywhere. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. So, Chris, Sheree, humanity, or people getting back their humanity. I think that's something that needs to be pushed just as much as the be afraid, or but I don't even like to push the be afraid aspect of it, because I don't like to push fear. If I bring something to the table that is scary or frightening, I'll warn people, like, you should be warned about it, but I don't like saying you should be afraid of this. It's going to naturally bring that fear out in you. It's look, anybody that's ever been through combat will tell you there is no real absence of fear. Okay, it's mastering your fear and controlling it. That is the difference. Are you going to let your fear put you into a corner and control you and make you, put you into this little tiny, curl up into a ball? Or are you going to deal with it and stuff it, in your back pocket and allow it to maybe keep you on edge and keep you alive, but, not control you? That's anybody will tell you that when I say no fear, I don't mean that you can't have any fear. There's no such thing. No, there's fear and love. There's two universal frequencies, two of them that the universe operates on. If you want to dumb it down real easily for everyone, right? Well, you can't get rid of fear. It's going to be there, but it's how you deal with it and how you control it. And these people, the controllers, the powers that shouldn't be, whatever you want to call them, they know how to manipulate us using this fear and getting us to. That's where hate comes from. See, hate isn't the opposite of love. Hate is actually an emotion brought on by fear. Okay, fear is the opposite of love, right, Chris?
There's only two emotions, love and fear. And it's amazing because I got into it with a psychiatrist who was telling me that there's way more emotions than that. And he says, well, try telling that to one of my patients who comes in because her husband has cheated on her. All those feelings that she's feeling is coming from fear. And I said, yeah, absolutely. I know she's feeling depressed. She's feeling anguish. She's feeling all of these, but it all comes from the fear of not being good enough, the fear of getting a divorce, the fear of being on her own. So it always comes from fear or love, two emotions. And if you can realize that, then it simplifies things so much more. And then when you are feeling a negative feeling or even a positive feeling, you can better understand why you're feeling that feeling.
Well said, Sheree. Thoughts?
I completely agree with Chris because that is true. It's always coming from that fear aspect, and it doesn't have anything to do with the hate, really. It's just the fear of losing someone or something that you love dearly.
Yeah, and fear of going through that pain, experiencing. A lot of people, it's just like, how many people do I know? And I'm covered in tattoos. Most people know this. I know a lot of people that say to me all the time, I get it at least literally 5-6 times a week, I would get a tattoo, but I'm afraid of the pain. Well, if that's the only reason why you wouldn't get a tattoo, then you should go get one. I mean, don't be afraid of the pain. Yeah, you're going to experience it. It's how you deal with it. And that fear, look, in my own life, I've experienced it. When I was younger, I always wanted, my father had a motorcycle, my uncle had a motorcycle. I always wanted a motorcycle, but there was something in the back of my head that used to tell me, you're going to crash and die on a motorcycle. A lot of my family friends were killed in motorcycle accidents. So, and my mother I would hear her in the back of my head, oh, you're going to die if you get a motorcycle. So for a long time, that fear, even though I didn't even realize it, was being fed inside of my head. And then one day I was like, you know what? I'm going to get my motorcycle license, and then I'm going to go get a bike. And I did just that. I went and got my motorcycle license, and then I went and got myself a Harley. Did I crash and die on it? Nope. Once because I did sell it, I got rid of it because of my leg. I had a couple operations, and it was going to be a few years before I could ride a motorcycle again, and I didn't want to have to tote the thing around and pay for insurance and everything else. I could always get another bike, so I sold it. But I got the point was to get over that fear, even if I didn't. And at first I had to even acknowledge that fear was there. That's the first step, is to acknowledge that it even exists. A lot of people can't even get over that. I'm not afraid of anything, Chris. What are you talking about? I don't fear anything. I'm Superman. I fear nothing. No, we all have something. Even if we don't want to admit it, we all have something inside of us that we, I guess we fear. And I'm not talking about primal fear of sharks or things like that. You know what I'm talking about.
Right. We all have fear. The goal is to control that fear and to control the natural body reactions of the higher blood pressure, the higher heart pumping, all of that, in order to be able to look at your adversary and engage in a game of wits rather than anything else. That's what the police do. As soon as those lights come on, those lights have been psychologically proven, and that's the reason why they use the red and the blue, is because it puts you in a fear state. It automatically does something to the brain. And then you see the cop walk up, he's got a gun, he's got a badge, and the way that they walk up as well, and automatically it puts you in that fear mentality. And even me, I've encountered many police officers. Every time I get pulled over, every time I see those red and blue lights behind me, my heart starts pumping a little faster, I start sweating a little bit, and I start shaking a little bit, and I have to take a deep breath and say, calm down, control this emotion. Luckily, I'm able to achieve it by the time they walk up, and then we have an exchange of words like two human beings rather than a cop and a subservient. But to the tattoo thing, though, I do have to say tattoos hurt pretty bad. I have one on my arm. That didn't hurt. But the one that I got on my back, oh, my God, right on that bone. Oh, that was probably some of the worst pain that I've ever felt. Besides having it laserly removed. I've had laser treatments on my back, and that hurt even worse.
No, laser. I had a sleeve. I had a half sleeve. Well, I'm working on a full sleeve, but I had half of it that I didn't like, and I lasered the entire thing off. I would go in full sessions to do the whole thing in one session and be like 45 minutes. And dude, I know exactly how you feel. It's like hot grease being poured on you. Oy. Ugh.
It is. Well, now, about fear, though, my father instilled the fear of driving with a trailer or pulling something behind my car or driving large cars, like big trucks, U-Hauls, things like that. And I remember the first time that I got behind the wheel and I had a boat behind me, or I got in a U-Haul. Oh my God, I was so freaking scared. And I've done carpet cleaning for the last 10 years. I drive a big van, and, I've driven even 18-wheelers when I worked for this company, taking equipment from one city to another when there was a huge flood in another city. Once you conquer that fear, I've thrown it all out the window now. I'll get in the biggest U-Haul that I can get, and I drive it just like it's a regular car. I back it up, and everything's fine. But you've got to conquer that fear. But I understand totally what you're talking about, because parents have a tendency to instill their fears into the children.
Well, that's how we get programmed, dude. I mean, that's exactly how and I'm not bashing parents, but I don't think parents even realize that, without even realizing what we're doing a lot of times. And you're forming your kid's opinion by saying certain things to them, or trying to, like, parents that are heavily religious. I know a kid who he's not a kid anymore. He's a grown man like we are. But when we grew up, I grew up with him, and his parents were heavily religious, and they forced their religion down their throat, or down his throat. And as a result, now he's not, in that religion whatsoever, because they pushed him to, you know what I mean? They pushed him to the extreme where, and I'm not sure if he even is any religion, or if he just is what he is or whatever. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I know he's not, in that religion anymore. And it's because it was shoved down his throat. It was forced upon him like that, And now as he's older, that affected him. And it created negative experiences in his childhood that I know that he's taken with him to his adulthood. And we all go through that. That's where our quote-unquote baggage comes from, our childhood. Think about it.
Oh, of course. My grandparents were always warning me, don't touch that, don't do this, don't do that, that'll hurt you, that could kill you, that could choke you, that could burn you. It was all about staying away from everything. And so now, even to this day, I have to wear like latex gloves whenever I'm handling ground beef, because of course, if you touch ground beef with your hands and get it under your nails and bite your nails later, you could get E. coli. That is just the way my mind works now, because of the eccentricities and just fear that my grandparents put into me as a young child.
Yeah, and we carry that forever. I mean, we literally I don't think people don't even realize the effect you could have by using fear. And that's why, I mean, yeah, you could scare the crap out of your kid and tell them, if you touch that stove, you're going to burn yourself. But do you really think, I mean, you could actually get the kid to stay away from the stove for 20, 30 years of his life, But do you think the kid is really going to understand anything unless he experiences it himself? You know how I experienced not to touch hot things? I was probably, 4 or 5 years old, and my mother went to an antique store in the town next to where we lived, and I was sitting in the car, and she said, "Stay in the car, and don't mess around with anything." And I was like, "Okay," because she just had to literally go pick something up about 10 feet away and put it in the trunk. So she picked it up, and in between the time that she got out of the car and picked it up, and it was probably like 2 minutes, right? Well, in that 2 minutes, kids will be kids. I had seen the cigarette lighter in the car multiple times, and when she would pull it out to light a cigarette, and I noticed that it had coils in it. Well, in my mind, I said, "Oh, that's how you make fingerprints," because in my head, I correlated that with a fingerprint. So I pushed it in and got it red hot, pulled it out, put my finger, and jammed it right into the cigarette lighter.
Oh.
Yeah, like I was lighting a cigarette with but my tip of the finger was the cigarette. You have no idea how badly I got burned, okay? I let out a friggin' scream. My mother comes running back. I was burned. It was horrible. I can still actually remember, even talking about it right now is making my finger throb, believe it or not. Like, I can remember the pain. And you know what? To this day, I learned that hot things burn you. Okay? I can remember that lesson. Like I said, I was maybe 4 or 5 years old at the time. I can remember that now in my mid to late 30s. I can remember that. Why? Because it's one of those experiences that you take with you forever. That's how you learn things. And I don't think any kid's going to learn hot burns you until they stick their hand on the stove or do something stupid like I did.
I have one for you. We were buying Christmas trees, and I was about 3 or 4 years old, about the same age, and they had this I don't know what it was. It was just this like oven type thing, but it was, I guess, to produce heat outside, and kind of like a stove. And my dad said, "Don't touch that. That's hot." And I said, "What's hot?" And I put my whole hand on it, and my whole hand blistered up. I mean, literally from the palm to the tip of the fingers was one huge blister. And I remember sitting in my bunk bed that night with my hand in cold water all night long, and just the way that it felt to have the whole hand just blistered up. So I'm right there with you. I think every kid goes through that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how you learn. Like, that's how you learn what hot is. And I bet you to this day, you're like, oh, damn, I don't want to put my hand on that oven or on that, on the burner, because I'll burn the crap out of my hands. Or I don't want to grab the bottom of that pot because the pot was just on the burner and it's hot and I'll burn my hand. Or fire will burn my hand. You remember that lesson. You know what I mean? Right. So, and by the way, that is how they condition us too. They use that same method that we learn like that to condition us to be afraid of things too. That's where the whole trauma-based mind control comes in.
When I first started driving, I hydroplaned into a mailbox. And it was funny because I had taken my mom's car without permission. Mm-hmm. We were like 14 years old.
Right.
And we were driving around on acid on top of that.
He was a bad kid.
You mean Chris Gio was a bad child? I'm being sarcastic, ladies and gentlemen. I'm being very sarcastic.
It was pouring rain for like 2 weeks in October of that year. I don't know what happened, but it was just like constant storm every single day. And we were driving around middle of the night, hydroplaned into a brick mailbox. Poof. I called my mom up. I said, "Mom, I got into a car accident." She's like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Who's driving?" And I said, "I was driving." And she says, "Oh, okay. It's no big deal. We'll pay for the mailbox." I was like, "Mom, you don't understand. I'm in your brand new car." But it was that lesson that taught me anytime you start to slide on water, you're supposed to pump the brakes, not slam them. And there's probably been a dozen or 2 dozen times throughout my life that I've had to do that, pump the brakes instead of slam it. As a matter of fact, when I was driving to see Sheree one day, I was driving from Dallas, and
those roads to East Texas are really
bad. That Chris Gio was in Dallas, ladies and gentlemen. Dun, dun, dun. Breaking news. Chris Gio was involved in the Kennedy assassination. I'm just kidding.
Well, I've been there many, many times, and there's no way.
You're not helping with that conspiracy theory that I just started at all, because now you're like, I've been there many times. I'm sure you'll be linked to it by next week.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Well, I walked in because I wanted to see, the actual room itself, and there was a conspiracy museum, and there's the regular museum. I thought I was going to the conspiracy museum. I think we were together, as a matter of fact. Yeah. And I walk in, and they have all the official fable all over the place. And this is in the book depository. And I'm asking, so what exactly happened? She says, "Oh, well, Oswald did this and did that and blah, blah." And I said, "Isn't this the conspiracy museum?" And she says, No, that's down the street, but they shut down already. Oh, okay. But anyways, when you get up there and you take a look, there's no possible way that shot came from that window. I mean, look at the footage.
You ever see Bill Hicks? You ever see his take on the Kennedy assassination? He's like, they don't let you go up like all the way up to the window. Because they have they let you go up to a certain spot. Even from that spot, though, you could tell.
Right.
But he's like, you know why they don't let you go to the window? Because if you walked up to the window, people would be like, no effing way! There's no effing way he shot Kennedy. Oh my God, they killed him. They did it. Oh!
Well, if he would have shot him from that window, I mean, aside from the fact that there's this huge tree in the way, I don't know, maybe the tree wasn't there back then, but now there's this huge tree in the way, the shot would have come from the back of his head forward, not from the front of his head backwards. I mean, there's just no possible way. Physics, I mean, unless the bullet ricocheted off the overpass and then hit the big monument that's there, came back around and hit him in the front of the head, I just don't see it.
Well, they call it the magic bullet. So, what happened was the bullet went out, and it flew around, it hit Kennedy a couple times, hit Connolly, made some bullet holes in a few different things, flew around all over Dealey Plaza. And then, of course, they couldn't find the bullet, and then it decided to stop itself on a stretcher in Parkland Hospital.
And then they lost the brain.
Right.
How convenient.
Well, what was left of it, because there really wasn't much left of it after the projectile came through the front of his noodle. I like how, and I can't remember his name again, and I was talking about this off air last night. The broadcaster, I think it was for CBS, maybe it was ABC, dark hair, and he died of cancer a couple of years afterwards. But I can't believe I can't remember his name now. But he did a Kennedy special, and now that's the only thing you see aired on the History Channel around the Kennedy assassination, like around the time frame, anytime the anniversary comes up. You don't see the Men Who Killed Kennedy series at all. Period.
Well, I knew Frank Ellsworth, and he died mysteriously in around 1997 or 1999, somewhere in there, and it was an asthma attack. When have you ever heard of a 70-year-old man dying of an asthma attack when he's got his inhaler right there?
Well, I was listening to a show, and I believe it was your show, Popeye, and they were talking about Oswald and the connection to the Wizard of Oz, and then how do you get out of Oz? You use the ruby slippers, and Jack Ruby killed Oswald. It was pretty weird, but
really weird, but
very coincidental occult connections that whoever was speaking was making.
Well, even Ike has talked about how, if you look at David Icke brings up a good point. If you look at the Kennedy assassination, if you look at Dealey Plaza from an aerial view, if you look where Kennedy was shot, Dealey Plaza is a pyramid. It's like an unfinished pyramid, like with the missing capstone. Mm-hmm. And where Kennedy was shot is where the capstone would have been, where the all-seeing eye would have been.
Right. But
that's just a coincidence.
Where Kennedy was, if you're standing from the window, Kennedy would be, and if you're looking straight out the window, would be 12 o'clock. Where Kennedy was shot was about at 4 o'clock. And his car was already facing the overpass. They have a big X where he was shot. So we've gone down there many times and have taken a real good look. And it's just impossible to get that shot from that window.
Did you guys hear my broadcast on the Kennedy assassination at all in the past week and a half at all?
Yeah, we've been tuning in. I tuned into a couple of them, and I swear that connection between Oz and Ruby was on your show. Is it not?
No.
Okay.
It might have been. It might have been in either one of the replays that we played, because we played 9 hours of Kennedy stuff, plus we played Fletcher Prouty and a bunch of other stuff on the actual date. We did a 12-hour special where we played the entire Men Who Killed Kennedy series. I found some audio where Prouty was talking to Lena Senek about the Bay of Pigs invasion, which is actually the stuff he was going over. You know who Prouty is, right? Fletcher Prouty. You guys ever hear of him?
I've heard the name, but I couldn't point to any of his
You ever
work.
see the movie JFK with Oliver Stone's JFK?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. X, the Donald Sutherland's character, he meets him in Washington, and he tells him, it really doesn't matter who shot Kennedy, the mafia, the CIA, Cubans. He said that's kind of more like art, wall art. He said the real thing is why, which like Passio talks about causality, right? So the why did they kill him? Who benefited? And that's when he goes into Bell Helicopter, the Vietnam War, and all this other stuff. Well, that character, Sutherland's character, is based off of Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty, a real guy. He's now dead, but we played. I've played a bunch of audio from him on air before. Interesting man. There are certain things that he didn't mention, and actually, I'm going to pick Leno Senek's brain, because I'm going to have him on the broadcast in a few weeks. I've been talking to him about an interview, so I'm going to have him on because he has all of Prouty's archives, and he did the most interviews with Colonel Prouty. And the stuff we played, one of the clips I played on Thanksgiving night was he was talking about his one book, JFK, and then it's got this long subtitle, about the assassination or whatever. Just look up Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty, and then his books. And there's only 2 of them, The Secret Team and the other one's JFK. And he did a quick, 55-minute overview of his book. And you'll learn, you'll see, it gives you a good idea of what was going on behind the scenes during that whole time period. That's why I focus a lot on the Kennedy assassination. First of all, it was actually the first conspiracy I ever was exposed to, the very first. I studied ghosts and UFOs and the occult and stuff when I was a kid. And by happenstance, I stumbled upon conspiracies, again, because of my mom. And she urged me, her and my father always urged me never to believe the official story on anything and always look further into things. And look where I am today. All right, we got a break sneaking up on us. Ladies and gentlemen, top of the hour break. That means hour number 1 is up. Time just flies by, especially with these two. But don't fear, we'll be back. Hour 2, another hour of Chris and Sheree Geo. Don't go anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with our number dos. For those of you that don't speak Spanish, that would be 2. Here on tonight's edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. It is December 3rd, 2012. That's right. We have, what now, 18 days, I guess, until the end of the world? Yeah, 18 days, if my math is correct. So,
how did that, Popeye? You said dose first, because in this day and age, that's what happens. You push 1 for Spanish and 2 for English.
Very true. Very true. Although I do wish my mother had taught me, I wish when I was younger, I should say, I was exposed to choose a language as opposed to doing it when I was in high school, because by that time your brains are already destroyed from all the crap they fed you throughout the other years of school. But I wish my mother had taught me Dutch, because she spoke fluent Dutch. Wow. And she even said to me on her deathbed that she wished she had taught me Dutch. If I could be bilingual, I think it would be. It's very beneficial, I think, because I guess as a whole, it makes you use more parts of your brain. You know what I mean? Like, my wife speaks fluent Spanish, and she can translate stuff like on the fly, and I'm dumbfounded because I'm like, huh? I'm a pretty smart guy, and I'm like, what?
I was telling Chris today that it's probably because his mother taught him 2 languages, that he is so fluent in his speech, and he's very thoughtful sounding when he talks.
Well, I dated a Greek girl for about 6 years before I met Sheree. And so we spoke Greek in the house every single day. And I spoke Greek to my mother as I was growing up. That's all that we would speak in the house, not because she wanted, to be the Greek family, but because she wanted to instill that into us. And so for a long time, I started thinking in Greek. And I noticed when I was thinking in Greek, I could think of ideas a lot better because there were so many different types of words. Since she passed away, I haven't spoken Greek in about 2 years. I just went to a family's house the other day for Thanksgiving, and my Greek is just terrible. It's fallen apart. And I've over the last 2 years, I started thinking in English again. I don't know what that means, but
I know what you mean about it makes your brain think. It makes your brain spark and fire, because my wife, she thinks in Spanish. She tells me all the time. Sometimes she'll be talking to me, and she has to stop for a second and think of like an English translation of what she's trying to, what she's thinking of in Spanish, because perhaps it's some form of slang or whatever, and there's not an English word for it, so she has to come up with a word, and then try to reword it. But she's like on the fly. I don't know how she does it. I mean, she makes me feel inferior when I talk to her and I listen to her talk Spanish, because she can switch back and forth. But she says she thinks in Spanish. And like you said, it's because, I guess, well, in the case of Spanish people, their language, their vocabulary, a lot of it is dramatic. And I guess it helps her think better when she thinks in Spanish. So she'll think in Spanish and then formulate the answer in English.
It's funny that you mentioned this at this time. Sheree and I were having a discussion earlier about the fact that in high schools they're actually teaching Ebonics as a language. You can learn Spanish, French, Ebonics, whatever. Ebonics is a recognized language. And I went through a phase when I was working with a lot of rappers. I was writing hip-hop music for them to rap over, and so my speech started to become like theirs, real ghetto. And it was when I saw 1984 that I stopped that completely, because I realized it's newspeak. What they're doing is taking words out of the dictionary, taking words out of your vocabulary, I should say, so you can't think critically. Because if you don't have the words to think about, then you're not going to be able to formulate.
Yeah, if you don't have that lexicon to pull from, then your brain won't, your brain isn't automatically, our brains are like computers. And if it's like having, a file folder with certain fonts or whatever in it, and if those fonts aren't there, you're not even going to think to use those fonts. And if those words aren't there, you're never going to use them. And then the thoughts that could be formulated by putting those words together won't even come to fruition, because you're not using the words. That's why they dumb us down with word magic, dude. I mean, look at how many words are used completely out of context. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And people say things backwards all the time, I mean, that's part of the mind control conditioning as a whole, right? I mean, that's how they control society, is to get people to look at Facebook as a perfect example, dude. Memes. They put memes out there, and people will buy automatically whatever a meme says. right off the bat, and they'll start reposting it and sharing it without even looking in to see if any of it's true. There's a percentage of the population that'll just right off the bat mimic it. And that's because we've been programmed to learn like that and react like that to certain things. I mean, it bothers me. That's why I get pissed off when people regurgitate stupid things, and I get frustrated with it. And sometimes I lose my temper, and it's because I understand I look at these people who are really intelligent, especially when it's on a personal basis, like if I'm talking to them one-on-one and it's someone I love or respect, and I know they're so smart and they regurgitate this stuff, and it's like, you know what I mean? Because I know that's not really their opinion. That was formulated for them and programmed into their head, because it's the same regurgitated garbage that probably 10 of their peers would come up with, rather than actually think. Because when I forced these people to think, I'll tell you probably 8 out of 10 of them will go, oh, wow. Oh. You know what I mean? Like when you actually force them to turn the light on in that dark space in their head, and you say, look, go in there and turn the attic light on and look around. And when they do that, all of a sudden you can see them. You know what I mean? I know you guys have experienced it, where you can look somebody in the eyes and all of a sudden you can see it in their eyes as the light bulb comes on.
Yes. My favorite is, like you mentioned, Facebook and YouTube. If I get into a conversation with somebody about anything that we talk about on the shows or any of these topics, and I will give them several facts to counter whatever argument that they're making, and they turn around and reply with, "You're an idiot." And they spell it Y-O-U-R. That's the most classic, in my opinion. Y-O-U-R, you're an idiot.
But if you point that out, then you're called a grammar Nazi.
Exactly. But if you're going to call me an idiot, at least do it in the right way. Y-O-U''R-E. At least do it the right way.
Yeah, in case people aren't aware, Y-O-U-R is like as in, Chris, that's your cup of coffee, or Sheree, that's your cup of coffee. But your, as in like, if I was going to tell Chris, you're an idiot, and I was going to say, you're an idiot, it's your is short for you are. So it would be Y-O-U''R-E. Okay? Just so everybody's clear. Because I know people get called grammar Nazis, even back in the day when I was stupider to certain things. Even I would make that stupid comment. And you know what? I was wrong. And you know why I was wrong was because I should have seen it for what it is. If like what Chris just pointed out, that's a big thing right there. That's a perfect example of how people are being dumbed down. They don't even know regular grammar. Why do you think they can get away with saying that the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution with the Second Amendment, the comma was put in the wrong spot, it was a grammatical error. They're trying to reinterpret what the founding fathers did. And if people were well educated, like they were better educated, I should say, at least grammar wise and everything, like they were 100 years ago. And believe it or not, yes, 100 years ago, people actually had a better education when it came to real grammar and meaning of words and stuff and real history than we do now. Okay, this crap is just manufactured garbage by the Rockefeller controlled. What is it called? I forget the name of the place that puts out the books, but it's all controlled. All the textbooks are controlled.
It's to do with Global 2000. It's all part of this globalization project that's meant to harmonize all of the nation's school districts into one big thing that decides what our kids are going to be reading, what they're going to know about, and what they're not going to know about.
And you know where they get the guidelines from, Sheree? UNESCO.
Exactly, the UN.
Well, Sheree came across some information where she found I want to say it's a 7th or 8th grade test from the late 1800s.
Right.
And it was college level material that they were teaching back then to 7th and 8th graders.
Oh, yeah, dude. I know exactly what you're talking about. When I interviewed Charlotte Iserby for the first time, she talked with me about this test from that her son found. It was a constitution test, or a government test, whatever. Or whatever it was called. I don't want to call it social studies because that's what they changed it to, history, whatever it was called back then. But I actually have a link to the PDF to download on Federal Jack. And it was from, I think this test, I want to say it was from like the late 40s, early 50s. And I know somebody, one of the hosts on our network, Ken, who's in his 60s, he I had talked to him about this, and I asked him if he had remembered a test like this, and he said that they had the same kind of test, and it's not, they don't have it anymore. But if you looked at this test, we tried taking this test on air one night, dude. Us, like a bunch of Joe Joseph, there was a couple other people, I forget everybody else that was there. Tim Watts was there, Ken was there. There was a bunch of us trying to take this. I think it was on one of our older shows, WTF. Anyway, we were taking the test on air, and none of us could. We tried to answer a few questions, and none of us could answer any. It was hard as hell to answer the questions, especially like trying to put it to today. And then you had to sit down and think, and you were like, wow. I mean, they were asking questions like, like who's the Secretary of the Interior or whatever, random things like that. And you had to know it. I mean, this was part of your mandatory education. You want to put it compared to what they get educated today. I ran into a kid a couple years back, and a couple people, actually, somebody I was just on, I got interviewed the other day, and they had heard me talk about this story on air, and they asked me about it. Where I used to live when I lived down in Miami Beach, down in South Beach, I used to go to a restaurant down there. I used to frequent that. The people at the restaurant, the manager and everybody, they knew us because we used to go in there and give them DVDs and everything. So they used to come up and ask us questions, because then they would start to see the news and they were like, well, that's weird. So they would come over and ask us questions. Well, one night, the hostess, whatever you want to call the girl at the front there, we were talking about the JFK assassination, and she looks at me and goes, Kennedy was shot? And I looked at her like it was one of those, like in a sitcom where they just give you the sideways glance. And I looked at her and I was like, you're kidding, right? And she's like, no. I said, what do you mean you've never, what do you, I was just blown away. I was like, what do you mean that you don't know about the Kennedy assassination? Because she went into a little bit of detail, and I don't have to go into it, but she went into a little detail about, she didn't know, and, she was asking all sorts of questions. So when I sat her down, she explained to me that when she was in school, and she just graduated like a year and a half maybe, that they told her Kennedy died while in office. And I said, well, did they tell you how? And she said, no, they just said that he died. So they left out the large metal projectile going through his forehead? I guess they neglected to tell you that. And she said, yeah, they never told us that he was shot in the middle of a street. And I said, yeah, he was shot in the middle of Dealey Plaza. It's like major piece of history. They're not being taught this. So if the kids aren't being taught this, you know what I mean? If you control history, dude, and the kids aren't being taught, then same thing, now they're not teaching cursive writing anymore. Well, what's the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence written in? Cursive. Well, what happens if you can't read cursive? Because if you don't understand how to write cursive, you're not going to be able to understand how to read it. So if you can't read cursive writing, right, you have to go by someone's quote-unquote translation. So what happens when they translate it to regular typed, whatever the frig it's called, regular handwriting, whatever, non-script, right? What happens when it's translated and things are changed?
Right. Well, I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. The Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, is going to be translated as the right to not wear gloves.
Yeah, no, you're right, dude. They're gonna literally they won't even have to have a constitutional convention, because the only people that'll know about it are the people that and will understand the reality of it are the people that either A, know history, or B, understand cursive writing. But they don't think in terms of now. They think in terms of 40 and 50 years from now. That's what they're doing.
You know what, Popeye? There is hope, and that's why it's up to us to teach our children. We had a guest on named Mikey, 9 years old. Mm-hmm. We had him on last Saturday. Go check out the archives. I don't want to, plug our show, but truthfrequencyradio.com. Go down to the bottom and get the last archive. 9-year-old kid was schooling us on what consciousness is, on the history of Atlantis, on our hidden human history, on what aliens are, on what God is. I mean, it was absolutely amazing to hear this 9-year-old kid speaking like this. And I have to be honest, when Sheree said, hey, one of our listeners' son wants to come on, he's 9 years old, I thought to myself, how the heck am I going to do a full hour interview with a 9-year-old? And as it turns out, they were a few minutes late. We had to get a guest on for the first 30 minutes, and we only did a half hour with him. But now I wish we would have been able to do a full hour with him, because it was absolutely amazing to hear this 9-year-old kid with so much knowledge. And I asked him, what are they teaching you in school? And he says social studies and this and that.
And cursive.
He had really no interest, and I don't even think he was paying attention to what was going on in school, but he was completely up to date on the Constitution, on consciousness, on who we are as spirit beings. It was amazing.
Well, there is hope, and I'm not one of these people that runs around trying to say, oh my God, I'm not Chicken Little, the sky is falling. Yes, the sky is on its way down and things are going to be rough, but we could get through it. And it's like when everybody's talking about going off the financial cliff, and everybody's putting out, we're going to go off the cliff, but no one's talking about that. We're going to go off the cliff regardless. Okay. How about if we go off in a controlled descent with a parachute, as opposed to going off in a flaming car, screaming Thelma and Louise style? We don't have to do that. I mean, look, things can get rough. Things are going to get rough, but that's because we didn't handle it 4 years ago, and the longer we put it off, the worse it's going to be. Although, honestly, if we turned around, I said this before, we solved the national deficit in about 2 minutes. You tell the Federal Reserve to screw, because their charter comes up in 18 days. We don't have to renew it, right? Just let it run out. There you go. We don't even have to audit the Fed. Goodbye. And then we can go after them, because now they're not connected to the government anyway, right? Now we can sick the quote-unquote government agencies on them, let their charter expire, tell them to screw, and then turn around and everybody goes, well, Popeye, what about the Chinese? And they didn't buy American stuff. They bought bonds with the Fed, okay, and they bought into useless paper with the Fed and debt, and the Fed turned around and said to the Chinese that they could have certain real things that belong to the American people as collateral. We never said that. So we can sit and deal with the Chinese and say, look, this is the deal. Sorry, you got screwed like that. We'll work with you, but you're not getting our national stuff or any of our resources. But what we will do is we're going to round up all these scumbags and we're going to give them to you. And you do whatever you need to do with them. If you guys have to torture them and put them on a rack, well, hey, look, they screwed you for a lot of money, so who am I to tell you how to handle your business, right? And believe me, I'm sure the Chinese would handle things accordingly. I'm sure they wouldn't have these scumbags working for them. I'm sure the Chinese would interrogate the hell out of them. And then obviously you work things out with them, but you tell the Chinese and all these other countries that own debt, look, sorry, but you didn't buy it with us. You bought it with these people. So we'll work with you, but we're not gonna be beholden like these people want us to be. And let's recall all of our troops. Bring everybody home. Stop wasting money on that. And then, hey, we would have money for health care, and we wouldn't have to have obozo care. You would actually have health care, not a government-controlled system. Which, by the way, the first thing Adolf Hitler did when he came to power was one of the first things the Nazis did was nationalize the healthcare system, and then they used that to go help with their eugenics process. So just remember that.
Well, right, because they would look for people who had disabilities from looking up people in the program and just come to your house. They would take your kid and tell you that your kid was going to get treatment at a hospital. And then pretty soon, oh, sorry, your kid died. Yep. That's just the way it rolled. And it's going to roll the same way with this health care plan. Well,
did you see the article in the Daily Mail about that? There's doctors that admit now that they've starved babies and stuff, and they've actually let them, die. Which, I mean, it sounds very dramatic, but it's true. I mean, let's set history straight. Make sure people understand something. The Nazis were eugenicists, but does everybody know where they got their ideas from? They got it from the United States. You can go look this up.
Yeah,
they got their plans, their eugenics, the layout for their eugenics programs and stuff. They studied over here in the United States how we were already doing it. So it's not when people go, "Oh, they would never kill babies." Really? We've done it in the past. There's still people that are alive to this day. If you pay attention to the news once in a while, you'll see something true, a little bit of truth. You see the people that have been coming out that were sterilized. And all these states are now trying to, they've won court cases where the states, states probably don't have any money to pay them, but they're supposed to get restitution because they were sterilized when they were younger because they were they were found mentally unfit or whatever. Well,
because they wiped out thousands of families.
Exactly. Well, I mean, the Nazis did the same thing, and everybody rags on them, but no one bothers to remember that they got their stuff from what we already had set down before they came to power. So This is ugly American history that people don't like to talk about. This is where I get people putting their fingers in their ears. No, that's not true.
And there are some people out there, and I know of a few, I'm not going to say any by name, that actually do believe that it would be better for us to have some sort of program that got rid of people like this. Or, wouldn't you love to not have retarded babies being born and stuff like that? And that's all well and good, but it didn't seem to work out because obviously we have the same amount of crime. We have more deformities and more of that kind of stuff going on with our birth rate. And our birth rate is actually the lowest it's been since 1920. We don't even have enough people to replace ourselves. Do we really need to be implementing a eugenics program?
Well, no, we don't. I mean, come on. This whole running out of space, overpopulation thing is a myth. The Japanese, what was it, like 2.5, 3 years ago now, they came out with a study, an independent study that said there's more than enough space in Africa alone. And people just go Google this. You'll see it. I'm not making this up. Okay. And I don't remember exactly who did it, but there was this Japanese group of Japanese scientists, whoever, they looked into it and they studied it. There's more than enough room in Africa alone, landmass, to grow enough food to feed everybody in the world. And I mean everybody right now in the world. So this whole overpopulation garbage is a myth. They want you to buy into that so that they can get people packed into these tight cities, cordon off huge areas of land, not allow any humans there, because after all, only certain people of, a certain caliber should be allowed, near national parks or anything like that, because the rest of us are just cattle and useless eaters. And it's all part of this Agenda 21 plan. This isn't about saving the ecosystem or everything else. It's about taking total control of everything and then convincing mankind themselves that they are the problem, and the only solution to the problem is to allow themselves to be exterminated like a virus or cockroaches in your kitchen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got a break sneaking up on us. Don't go anywhere. Another half hour with Chris and Sheree Geo of Truth Frequency. Two of my favorite people in the world. Do not go anywhere. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment tonight. And, man, just time flies when I have certain guests on. And every time you guys come on, it's like, boom, I blink and the show is over already.
Let me put this on the record. Terrence McKenna said that we, as people who are not happy with the system, should rejoice when we see it crumbling, when we see the banking system failing, when we see the governments failing. It's going to be rough as we go through it, but ultimately we should rejoice. Why are we getting in a panic when the system that we despise so much is falling apart? I've taken those words and I've lived by those words. And yes, it is very difficult right now, especially now as we're moving towards December 21st. And I think that would be a good topic to get into since we're only 19 days away. I personally believe that it's an energy shift. We're feeling the energy. We're feeling the polarization. I feel very bipolar, and I'm in the clinical sense of bipolar. 1 minute I'm feeling great, the next minute I'm like, screw all this, I don't want to do this anymore. But that's just the polarity of the energies that we're experiencing as consciousness shifts and our awareness awakens. I asked little Mikey, 9 years old, what is consciousness? And he says, well, consciousness is the ability of man. At first, we lived in the Stone Age and we had to drink water out of our hands. And then somebody figured out that you can make a cup and drink water out of a cup. So there was a consciousness shift when that happened. And then we started to create houses and technology. And that was even more and more and more of a consciousness shift. A lot of people think of consciousness shift as some weird esoteric idea.
New agey
but it's really
stuff,
not.
Yeah.
What it is a higher awareness of the world around you, who we are, and we are becoming more capable of just being beings in ourselves. I mean, look at what happened between the 50s and now. Total technical revolution. I personally believe is because we recovered some alien technology from the crashed saucer at Roswell, but that's a whole nother story there. But regardless, our consciousness shifted. Our consciousness is now shifting. The veils are all starting to come apart. And I do believe that December 21st is a marking, a milestone of this event. And it's not one big event that's going to happen, poof, as soon as it hits midnight on December 21st. It's something that has been crescendoing up to this point, and it's going to continue to crescendo. But I think December 21st marks the new age, literally the new age. A lot of people hate that term new age. Well, was the old age really that good? People say, let's stop the New World Order. Are you really happy with the old world order?
Well, you really can't stop the New World Order. See, Mark Passio and I have talked about this. There's going to be a New World Order. It's just whether or not it's this enlightened New World Order where we all get along and we start to like actually not kill each other and explore space and the oceans and everything else, or it's going to be this dark New World Order, which is what the people that are in charge right now, the people in positions of power, want and are pushing us towards. We're going to change. There's a change coming. You can't stop it. So trying to do that is right off the bat. It's like pissing in the wind. You're not going to win. You're going to waste your time. And that's actually what these people that want a dark New World Order want. They want you to waste your time trying to stop the inevitable. We have a choice. It's like Bill Cooper said. We have a choice, and I repeat this all the time. We either make a turn. We have a fork in the road, and we either make a turn where we go up down this path of enlightenment, and we actually evolve as humanity, and the way we think, and the way we treat each other, and the way we handle things, or we make the other turn, and we go down this path of total tyranny, and it's just going to be if you think it's horrible, if you think the Dark Ages were horrible, from history, just wait, because now it's going to be the Dark Ages with a technocratic edge to it. And I've talked about this with Mark. I said, the way I look at it is if the universe, this is our chance, you have like an open window, and if we don't take it, you have to go through this cycle again. And the way the universe has a tendency to work is if you didn't go, if the first cycle you went through wasn't traumatic enough and didn't teach you enough things, on our journey here, right? Then when you go through it a second time, it's going to be even worse, because obviously you didn't learn your lesson. You know what I mean? You didn't learn what you were supposed to take out of that experience. You didn't take anything out of it. You didn't learn from it. So now it has to be worse because it's going to be worse because that's just, it's kind of like the way it works. It's just the way of things. And until you deal with it, it's kind of like suicide. Have you ever heard the theory that when you commit suicide, you get recycled and you end up coming back because you have to, you dealt with whatever you were supposed to deal with when you were here. You dealt with it the wrong way. So you actually have to come back. And if you come back, it's worse the second time, that whatever it is, that it's usually the same type of scenario, but now it's going to be even more intense. And it's because you didn't learn from it the first time. So that's kind of like what we're going to go through as a whole, this, as humanity. Or do we want to evolve? Or do we want to stay do we actually want to go from where we are now, which if we think now sucks, you ain't seen nothing yet. So,
well, Papa, let me ask you this. When you take NWO and turn it around, what do you get?
Own,
right. They're either going to own you or you're going to own it. One or the other. Make your choice.
Oh, well said. Well said. I mean, that's basically it. Either we evolve. I would love to see an evolution of humanity. Are you kidding me, dude? I'm so tired of seeing people killing each other, and I'm not talking about. I mean, you could look at it at a lower level of shooting each other over oil or anything like that, on the battlefield. But I'm talking about like even in the inner cities and stuff. We everybody has this mentality of attack and kill each other. No one, except I have to say during like Hurricane Sandy. Those people did show, the better part of humanity because, they stepped up to the plate. The same people that were getting smacked around.
Well, and I'll tell you what.
Park rescued a lot of those cops that beat them up. So I have to give those people credit. But see, that shows if we could only put that out every day, you know what I mean, Sheree?
Well, and no good deed goes unpunished, obviously, because they raided them. Occupy Sandy got raided a few days ago.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding.
By the NYPD?
Yes.
For what?
Let me look it up. I just saw it out of the corner of my eye yesterday, and let's see.
Let me put this on the record real quick. For the Christians that are saying Christio is a New World Order Satanist because he's talking about New Age and blah, 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 blah. It's time to do what Jesus instructed us to do. And Jesus instructed us in Luke 22:10. He says, as you enter the city, a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him to the house that he enters. That's what we're supposed to do when the age is over. That's exactly what's happening right now on December 21st. The age of Pisces is ending. There's nothing anybody can do to stop it. It's the celestial bodies which are at work here, something far greater than us. And Jesus told us, when the age ends, then we are to go to the city and find the man bearing the pitcher of water. The man bearing the pitcher of water is Aquarius. Enter the new age and embrace the new age.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
Did I lose you?
No, I was actually contemplating what you were saying. And dude, I mean, look, the whole New Age thing, I know you've been attacked for it before. I've been attacked when Mark Passio and I have talked about things. Look, Lucifer and all that stuff, a lot of people don't get. They're allegories, okay? There was not a... Oh, it pisses me off. People don't understand this. A lot of these different entities that you hear named where they worship, they're all pretty much symbolic of the same thing, okay? They're a lot of the things that they're trying to achieve is this enlightenment, this esoteric knowledge, because unfortunately to them, with this knowledge, they can control things and they want to control mankind rather than give it to everybody, as everybody should have free and open access to it. They want to control who can have it. That way, they can control mankind. And unfortunately, there is still that level of people. And again, that's why I've said we have to evolve as humanity before we can even have this positive type of new system. And look, again, there is going to be a new world order. I'm not saying, oh my God, Popeye wants the new world order. No, there is. Even the founding fathers knew this. There's going to be a new world order. There's going to be a new way of thinking in this planet. It's just the evolution of mankind. The people that are in power now want to be able to control it because they don't want everybody to evolve. Because if everybody evolves, then their method of control goes away, their way of life goes away, and they don't want that. They're being selfish pigs. So they want everything for themselves, and they want to be able to control the evolution of humanity. And that's why we get bombarded by so many different things. That's why sex and fashion and how you look and everything is pushed out there in the forefront. Why do you think little girls have eating disorders at 11 or 12 years old? They didn't have that crap back in the, maybe once in a while back in the 50s they had that. You know what I mean? But compared to nowadays, no. I mean, it's you could put a blindfold on, spin around, and throw a rock in any direction. You'll hit a kid with an eating disorder or some sort of disorder or problem or whatever because of mainstream garbage that's pumped out, and the vision of what they're supposed to be.
Let me throw another curveball out there for the listeners. Isaiah 14:12. How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth. You once laid low the nations. And that's referring to Lucifer. Revelations 22:16. I, Jesus, have sent my angels to give you this testimony to the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David. I am the bright morning star.
Uh-oh. So are you trying to say that Jesus and Lucifer are... Are you trying to say that, oh my God, Chris? Oh my God. No, it can't be.
Just reading the Bible.
Well, you know what, dude? This blows a lot of people's minds. Religion's like the one most taboo thing you could ever talk about. People get all fired up. And it's like, man, you know what? What we know today as organized religion is just a method of controlling everyone. The real reality of the situation is nobody really knows the reality of things except a certain few people. And the Vatican seems to have everything that we need locked up in their basement. I don't see where the conundrum is here. Instead of invading Iraq or invading Iran, we should be focusing on where we really should invade. Vatican City. That way we can get into the archives and perhaps give that knowledge out to people all over the world. Can you imagine how much good could be done if everybody could just have access to information?
Well, the last person that tried to do that, we took his entire country and demolished and desolated all of his people. Saddam was going to take all of the Sumerian tablets, all of the artifacts, create this museum in Baghdad, and put them all on display for researchers around the world to take a look at. What did we do? We went in there. Our first operation was called Operation Planet X. We went into, quote unquote, secure a village. Inside of that village contained a museum that had all of these artifacts. Why did they call it Planet X, first of all? Second of all, they grabbed all of these artifacts. They grabbed the Sumerian tablets. Then what did the government do? They didn't keep it for themselves. They didn't put it in the museums here. They sold it to the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds. The Sumerian tablets that are available are maybe 5% of what actually exists. So now they've taken them out of a government's hands or out of the public's hands, and they put them into the hands of private sellers who are keeping them top secret.
And you're not that's not hyperbole, in case anybody thinks it is. You can actually go look up the Special Forces, the Army Rangers. They had used Rangers, and I'm not sure. I've seen, I don't know if it's true or not, I've seen articles written that Delta even partook in a few different raids on a few different places. It could be, but I know definitely that the Rangers raided, like the Baghdad Museum. They blew the doors off, went in, and they took things like a statue of a reptilian female breastfeeding a human baby. And doesn't mean that I'm saying that the reptilians from the fourth dimension are running everything and they live in the moon. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that in reality, there is a physical statue that one of the first things they secured when raiding this country was not to bring democracy or anything else. I mean, as they were raiding oil fields and securing oil fields and people were dying on oil fields, they were also raiding a museum. Now, what the hell kind of military value does a museum have?
That statue looks exactly like the icon of Mary with baby Jesus in her arms.
Yeah, except it's got a reptilian head.
Yes.
And, people go, that's mythology. Mythology, it's Sumer was where Iraq is. Okay, so who are we to, this is one thing that pisses me off when people go, Popeye, that was just their mythology. Well, how do you know that? How do you know that was their mythology? How do you know that 1,000 years in the future that somebody's not going to look back at us, right? Because we're going to look, quote unquote, primitive to whoever in the future is, right? And they're going to look back on us and go, oh, these stories about, people flying planes into buildings and terrorism and people, bad guys in your closet. Oh, it was all mythology. But to us, we lived it, and they tried to make it as real as they possibly could. Even though the story itself, of Bin Laden in your underwear drawer is BS, that's not the point. How do we know that what they wrote about, they didn't experience? I mean, I love the arrogance of these friggin' researchers. No, there's no way. There's just possibly no way. And why is that? Because you refuse to believe that this could be a possibility. That's the first sign of a bad researcher. Somebody that's not willing, and I'm not talking about bogus information, but if you're given information, especially when it comes to like things from outer space, if you look at all religions, everything goes back to them worshiping the stars and everything else. And then in every religion, in every creation story, it involves something coming from outer space down to the planet at one point or another. Every one of them. Destruction stories, same thing. People from outer space came out. I mean, if it's so crazy to believe that there's aliens, right? First of all, it's very arrogant to think that we're the only intelligent life in the universe. If that's what people really think, and then the American people are watching things like Honey Boo Boo, you have another thing coming. Because if we're the most intelligent thing in the world, or in the universe, everybody better look out. Really, seriously. As far as I'm concerned, we're like Earth, the reality TV show. Everybody in the universe tunes in to watch what the morons on planet Earth will do next. You can tune into the United States. You can tune into Europe. You can tune into the Middle East. You can tune into different channels. You know what I'm saying? It's like a reality TV show.
Listen to this. During Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Planet X was a U.S. Army mechanized raid conducted on a village near Ad Dawar and Al Dur, 11 miles north of Tikrit, on the night of the 15th November 2003 by elements of the 1st Brigade Combat Team, U.S. 4th Infantry, blah, 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 blah. It's there. This isn't a conspiracy theory, ladies and gentlemen. That was one of the first missions. And I'm not talking about the whole purpose of going into Iraq, but it's just so strange that this is one of the first missions that they ran.
Christopher Everard actually documented this in one of his secret space movies. I think it was the second one. Right in the beginning, he talks about the Iraq War, and he shows the certain connections to some certain stuff. And people make fun of the ancient alien thing, and there's no way that aliens came down. I mean, I love when people get arrogant, dude. Oh, there's no way aliens, come to the planet. How do you know that? I mean, really, it's against God. Really? Then how come all these paintings in churches have UFOs and things floating in the background? What's that?
We were at my mom's funeral. I couldn't help but look at Sheree. I mean, we had her dead body in front of us. The priest was doing the ceremony, and this was just jumped out at me so much that I had to pull my attention away from this to look at this and point this out to Sheree. On the very top of one of the stained glass windows was a pyramid with the all-seeing eye. Mm-hmm. It's like,
you can't make this stuff up, dude.
Churches. I'm going, oh my God, look at this. And then we started looking at all the other symbols, and my mind was taken away from my mother's funeral to look at how heinous and in your face this is. Yet I had been to that church hundreds of times as a child, and I never, ever noticed it until I started seeing with new eyes.
Oh, dude, I never noticed. I was a firefighter for 6 years, and I didn't realize until I started to see the certain symbolism that's in things all around us. Including certain Masonic symbolism, that when I was in the firehouse, I would flash back, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, all of our ceremonial stuff is Masonic based. Like everything we did there's a Masonic type of element to it, with kind of how they do their rituals and stuff. It was really crazy. And then I thought about when I was in the Boy Scouts, and I was like, oh my God, when you go from being like a Cub Scout to a Weeblo, and then from a Weeblo to a Boy Scout, you cross over what they call the light bridge. And the bridge it's like an arch bridge, this little arch wooden bridge that you walk over from one side to the other. You get the light bridge, like symbolizing your illumination. But as you walk over it, the sides of it, the bottom part is straight. It looks like an arrow, so you know which way, I guess, to walk over. But it's got, like, up the handles, it looks like sun rays. And you don't think about it until you realize, oh, wow, sun worship. You're going right, wow, it's right in your face. Bam, right there. And you don't even realize it until it's like you said, as soon as you pull the shades off your eyes, man, and you start to look at things, you're like, whoa. You start to realize it's all around you. I was in this small town recently, and they're so proud of their Masonic lodge that they have this huge stone out front with the Masonic, the compass, the square and compass. And then next to it, they have an inverted pentagram, right? 5-pointed star in the, the upside down, the satanic version of it, right? I mean, engraved right there, like, hey, right on the front lawn. And then they have it right up on the side of the building too, like it's nothing. And the best part is, there's a Methodist church right next door. Right next door. So you have a church right next door to a Masonic hall with a pentagram. And you could obviously trace out, you get the Baphomet head and all that. I mean, it's just disgusting, dude. It's like right in your face. And I'm not bashing all Masons, by the way. I know that there was, Pike talked about the different degrees of Masonry. I've gone over this with Christopher Everard before. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, to just say a blanket statement, by the way, that all Freemasons are bad. No. Only the high-ranking ones that sacrifice people and do weird things like that are the bad ones. Guys, we're almost out of time, and it like happens every time you come on. 2 hours just flies by. Really quick, I want you to plug. We got about 35 seconds. I want you to plug your network and everything. Go ahead.
Sure. We have a short URL, ktfrn.com, call letter K, Truth Frequency Radio Network, ktfrn.com/mobile. You can listen on your mobile device, BlackBerry, iPhone, and the other one, Android. And you can listen to Popeye's show, Joe Joseph's show, and all the shows that we pick up too. TruthFrequencyRadio.com, the main URL. We're on Friday and Saturdays, 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock Pacific time. And we've got some great shows. Of course, Live Free FM, 32 Degrees of Insanity, and much, much more. We're looking for some great hosts as well. So if anybody is interested in hosting a show and you have a good presentation, good information, and good equipment too. I've heard some people try to do a show on a laptop before and it just doesn't work out. But we are definitely looking for really good content as well.
Oh, awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming on. I love it when you guys come on. You guys are like two of my best friends in the world. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time and we are out of here. I'll catch you all again Wednesday. Gwen from Morning Brew is going to be on with me. Gwen Caldwell. She's another good friend of mine. Don't go anywhere. Make Lessons coming up.
Let me also say this. Thank you to Jimmy, because I know what kind of hard work you go through, dude.